gave me a real sense of, where is money being spent and getting absolute value and squeezing everything you can out of the resources you've got available. And it fundamentally shifted my thinking around how we do learning and development.
All right. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for being here. I have looked forward to this. I have been a guest on your podcast and you helped me tremendously setting this up. So thank you so much. So tell everyone listening just a little bit about yourself, where you are today.
I'm Andrew Jacobs, an independent learning consultant, currently sitting in my workspace in my house in London, East London in the UK, early in the afternoon on a cold January day.
Oh, yeah. January has been a real whopper. We have had ups and downs, like minuses, and now it's like going to be so warm today. Like, where are we? Yeah.
I post every day, and I put a post out today saying January 59th, because that's what it feels like, the 59th day of the month, and it's just drags and drags and drags.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'm going to go read that post for sure. Okay, so Andrew, we always go back in time to younger you, your very first career or job. Yeah, probably job experiences is better. So take us all the way back to younger you. What was your very first job, or that very first, pound you earned?
So I've done lots of different things. I mean, when I was a kid, first of all, my parents, when I grew up, we were pretty well off, so I didn't need to go and get a job. Then my parents divorced, and I lived with my mum and my nan. And my nan was really, protective. So I wasn't allowed to go out and get a job. And then I moved into a flat with my mum, my younger brother, in a not so salubrious part of North London. And it was like, no, you're not going to have a job walking around the streets at night kind of thing, because it was, it was just not the done thing. So
No.
I didn't really do much until I started working in supermarkets and stacking shelves and stuff like that, and then moved on from there to a range of different things. But probably stacking shelves was the first one that I probably remember, working on a till and filling out or filling up fizzy drink and soda shelves.
Okay. And what was some of the, days that stand out to you? Were there any, or was it just pretty much put it on the shelf and that's that?
So this goes back to the time, okay, so your audience will probably think, how did this happen? We didn't used to use barcodes. There used to be barcodes on things. There used to be price stickers on things. And so you had to use a pricing gun, which created a label which went onto each thing. So 24 case of Coca-Cola, and you had to get the pricing gun, ka-ching, 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 all the way through the 24. You take the plastic off, use a plastic cut, take the plastic off, stack it on the shelf. Next crate down, boom, cut the plastic, ka-ching, 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 and you had to do that on the tops of every bottles, and they had to be on the lid of the bottle, not on the side of the bottle, which made things difficult as well. So what I remember is the repetitive nature of this activity, and it was a physical activity. It was pretty much completely mindless. You needed your only concentration, and the only games you used to play yourselves was, can I make sure it goes right on the top, or can I make sure it goes in the centre, and stuff like that. And it was just it was all about speed and pace, and getting the fizzy drinks put onto the shelves in time, and just trying to work through pallets and pallets of this stuff.
Yeah, was it a little bit soothing? I can almost imagine that, like, noise.
It was, to an extent. Again, we're before the era, your audience, before the era of mobile phones, before the era of Walkmans. This was in the early 80s. And a Walkman was expensive, and you weren't even allowed to use them in the shop floor anyway. So there was no other noise apart from the sound of these pricing guns going off all the way around the store where people were pricing up stuff, and you would just hear the sound of these guns, and it was just get into a routine. Always, you always start on the bottom shelves first. You build a routine. people who would stack the pallet that would be delivered to you. You'd be standing in the aisle waiting for it. You'll get some pallets out, and then you find one of your pallets, take it out, and the first thing you do, unstack the pallet, and you build a routine so that you're putting from the base first. That's why I always did it. I always took the stuff out. I didn't work the pallet through. Used to take the pallets out and work from the bottom up. And it was you built routines for yourself just to try and, one, speed it up, but two, just make it that little bit more interesting. Because I get that point. There was a meditation of form in some way or another there.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for, meditation. I was thinking hypnotic, but yeah.
Hypnotic works the same. Yeah, it does. And it was just the and the routine and the regularity that you would put into it.
Yeah. Okay, so from there, how long did you last in that job?
I did a couple of years there, and then I left and then went back, and I trained as a butcher, and then what else did I do? I worked in a couple of other supermarkets and a couple of other clothing stores, and then I was a children's entertainer for a little while. That was fun, just because why not? Something to do, and then ended up working in retail banking, and got a proper job, for want of another word, working in retail banking.
Okay. So, wow, a butcher, a child entertainer, and then retail banking.
Yeah.
Those are all very different things. Tell me more.
So the butchery stuff was interesting. You go to a supermarket now and everything's pre-packaged and it's done in warehouses, off-site. Whereas supermarkets in the UK used to have butcheries within them, meat rooms where you would do stuff. And I was learning the how to butcher properly. I've got a permanent mark on my hand. You see this little red mark on my finger? Comes from a knife going through and just catching it, and that's from years. I've got another one on the left hand as well, from catching it on a bandsaw and so on. You just learnt these other skills. It was just what I learned from that, and what was really interesting from that, was you would take something whole. So you would take a lamb on a Tuesday, for example, and Tuesday was when fresh lamb was delivered. So it would be delivered on the Tuesday, and you would cut it down, and you would break it down, and you would turn it into, all of these individual component parts. So a leg or a half leg and a shoulder and a half shoulder, and the ribs and the chops and the kidneys. You would take out the lamb kidneys and so on, and you would just do all these individual things with it, and you would take this whole thing and then disassemble it. And deconstruct it to all of these individual elements, which I always thought was quite interesting, and I've never thought back to it until I started working learning. Just that idea of all of these component parts making a whole, but also just the lack of waste and trying not to waste anything from within that as well. So there was something to do with understanding how people wanted to see the thing, so the presentation piece, how not to waste stuff from your resources that you've got, and the need for a consistency, again, which goes back to probably the pricing thing, but a consistency around how you made things look, and delivery, which was interesting. And then children's entertaining was just Postman Pat was a kids' TV program in the UK.
I remember that.
Fair.
And his black and white cat.
Exactly. So I would go to children's parties dressed in a Royal Mail uniform with a 3-foot foam head on, and a stuffed black and white cat on my car dashboard, turning up to do children's
That's
parties
so
as
cool.
Postman Pat. Yeah.
Oh man, please tell me some stories there. Like, there must have been some days when you were like
So
enjoying yourself, but then also just other days, I don't know, parents. I don't know.
if you, a YouTube clip for you. This is a cool YouTube clip. What's this? And for the people just listening in, Andrew is holding his hands above his head as if with his palms facing inwards, and he's now nodding his head. What is this?
No idea.
So that's Postman Pat counting to 10 while he's playing hide and seek, because Postman Pat's eyes were up here. For example. Okay? So
Oh man, that's brilliant.
The other issue you had was the expectations of parents, and this is an interesting one. You ask about what parents thought. So I remember going to one place and the parents just being so incredibly dissatisfied at the end of it, because they booked Postman Pat. So Postman Pat turned up, and Postman Pat was okay. So this is a relatively small 1-bed, 2-bed apartment in the southwest of London, And okay, so what we'd like to do? Well, we do what you do in this room here. There was half a dozen adults and 8 or 10 kids, probably under 3. Well, what can I do with these children? So, we can try and play hide and seek, we can sing songs and so on. And they were expecting more, and I'm not quite sure what more they wanted. And there was something to do with the expectations from the parents there, which was incredibly challenging.
Yeah, and how did you manage that? Because I'm assuming you were pretty young yourself.
Yeah, I was early 20s. And it was just a case of speaking to them outside and going, well, these are the things that I can do. There's limits as to what I can do past that. I'm, from a safeguarding procedure. I wouldn't want children sitting on my knee. It wasn't right. Children sat on my knee. This is before lots of safeguarding stuff came in, but it was something that even at that time I was like, no, I'm not going to sit and do that. I will sit them around me and read a story, but I'm not going to to that individual child, for example, help the child, unwrap their Christmas present or birthday present. The parents hadn't given me a birthday present, which I was meant to deliver. That was my fault, apparently, as opposed to them not handing it to me at the front door, kind of thing. It was like having to just try and build stories around all of this. It was just incredibly complicated.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, there's, I can, and you must be, in your early 20s. I don't know how you deal with angry parents when you are, technically a child still, a young adult.
Yeah, I didn't do it much longer after that. That was the one that made me think, I don't know if I want to be involved doing this.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's not nice when the joy is taken away. Like you're doing this for the joy, and then that's just like takes it away. Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Yes. Okay. Now retail banking. That's kind of a shift. So, were you customer facing?
I started off customer facing.
Okay.
And
So like a teller, or
exactly.
Yeah,
So
okay.
bank teller, and I was also doing just general administrative tasks as well. The reason I took the job was primarily because I was butchering at the same time as well. I just got fed up of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I wanted a job that, one, I could walk to, and two, I would get a bit of a lie-in. I wouldn't necessarily even have to work Saturdays on as well. So, I was young, and because I did so much overtime when I was working in the butchery, it was like I had all the time to myself. But I was working every Saturday, and all my friends weren't. So I got, I was joining people late on a Saturday and stuff. So I thought, well, no, let's go and get a job doing something else. And worked in retail banking, doing generally all of the admin tasks. Again, pre-computers, they were very simple single-line display computers at the time. We hadn't gone into computerized age, but that was the space where I realised that I could do other things and put my brain to work rather than just some of the retail and general manual tasks that I've been doing in the past.
Nice. So you enjoyed that work?
Very much so. I got the opportunity to go through a range of different departments. So the customer side, the admin side, and then I moved into the mortgage arrears repossession side, going out doing visits to people, dealing with the conflict and stuff there was interesting. Going out, finding out which houses need to be repossessed and doing visits to those properties and stuff like that. And that was all pretty challenging stuff. And again, it built a bit of resilience, I'm sure, within me in relation to some of the challenges that will come around later in work. And it was when I was working in the retail banking sector that's when I got the opportunity to do some learning stuff. There was a manager there who said, we've got a Wednesday morning training session and I haven't prepped it. Here's the stuff at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. Do you want to have a look at it and see if you can do something? And literally came in the next day and did this training thing and about credit cards, I think it was, or something. And everybody enjoyed it. Everybody thought it was funny. Everybody thought it was good and engaging. And came up to me for a few days afterwards. That was really good. Enjoyed it. And the manager, went, well, that went down well. Do you want to do another one? And I just ended up. That's how I fell into doing the learning stuff.
Nice. I like that story. All right. So now. Oh, so many things. So packing shelves, postman Pat, butcher, retail banking. Now that is your first taste or jump into learning. So now tell us what happened from there, like the middle part of your career, and then you have mentioned some, career challenges which everyone goes through. So throw those in there.
So I realised, excuse me, sorry. I realised I liked the learning stuff. The learning stuff was the stuff that I really most enjoyed doing, and I thought there was an opportunity to do some good there. I'd always thought education had been a place I might go into. At school careers, officers said, you'd be a good teacher, Andrew, and it's always something I'd thought about, but I hadn't done anything around that space, and just ended up falling into the L&D stuff, and got a job within that bank doing learning and development, and that was good. It was going around and giving me a sense and understanding of business in a good way, and encountered sort of the first occasions where I thought I knew more than people that I worked with, and then realised no, I didn't at all. And because I'd done loads of different things within the bank and the sector, I thought, I can tell people about insurance and credit cards and what everything happened to be, and then got knocked off my perch. I was an arrogant little so and so at times, and found that actually I didn't know anywhere near as much, and that gave me pause and think about, okay, so just because I'm doing this job doesn't mean I know more than anybody else, and that was really good for me from a personal perspective. Just helped me understand that who I am as a person. Moved on from the retail sector into the fire service. So I moved from retail banking to learning and development within the fire service, which was, again, another really interesting space. So I've gone from a sector that I knew pretty well, and now into a sector I knew nothing about. And that was a really good test for me, because I didn't know what it was like on a fire ground. I had never been on a fire ground. I didn't go on a fire ground. The nature of the job that I was doing was very different. But I learnt an awful lot about camaraderie, how teams work, how effective teams work. I was working in the London Fire Brigade when July the 7th bombs happened, when the tube and bus bomb went off, and learnt an awful lot there about crisis management and how an organisation would use its resources in a different way. Left there, went into retail for a very short period of time. Absolutely loved it, but got restructured out of it, and then moved into local government, and it's been in government roles and so on, generally where I was for the last 10-15 years until I set up as a consultant.
Okay, wow. Let's go back to the fire brigade, because that is fascinating. I've actually volunteered for a very short time, just helping the volunteer firefighters. So yeah, I have about 3 days of experience there. So just tell us more. Actually, one of our best friends is a firefighter. So I suppose I know a little bit more than 3 days, but definitely just through his stories. And yeah, it's a fascinating place, and the people are so unique, right? Like the people that get drawn to that. So, tell us some of your hardest days there, and then I want to jump into the effective teams, because that's very fascinating, a very fascinating real life, situation.
I don't particularly want to go into detail on any specific dates, because, like I said, there were certain incidents like July the 7th where I learned an awful lot from, and had some very good conversations and did some good work with some very good people, and it's not something I want to really dwell over. There were some things that I learned from being there, though, about the nature of how organisations have to shift and reflect the society that they work in. When I joined, they were firemen. They called themselves firemen, even though the term was firefighter. So you're in a very strange place where lots of white men predominantly felt uncomfortable with recruitment of women, BAME, LGBTQ+, etc. And you could see that there was discomfort there, and that was interesting. they're also moving from an organisation that used to fight fires by spraying water on them to fighting fires by not letting them happen in the first place. So the nature of firefighting was now different as well. So it wasn't about turning up with blue lights on necessarily and cutting people out of cars, because cars became safer and people were less likely to have to be cut out of a car, and society had built in building controls and road controls and other safety controls. So the nature of the job was shifting and moving, and it was a very interesting place to be from that perspective. So I wouldn't want to talk about specific incidents, but there were lots of challenges just by the nature of how the organisation was changing to reflect its society that it was serving.
Wow, that's fascinating. So the whole identity was really changing. Yeah. Yeah, because I think, and if you had to draw as a kid a firefighter, it would be a man, and it would be a man on a truck with water. Yes, yes. So that is, yeah, and I didn't think about that. I mean, yeah, our firefighters they're busy cutting down trees and, getting ready for the fire season by preventing fires. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, absolutely. Nice. Okay. Yeah, so that must have been an interesting environment for you. And well, I wonder if that shaped you. And, I'd like to ask you, because I know your podcast is Women in Learning. And I just wonder if that shaped your, approach.
Very much so. So again, we're talking 20 odd years ago. I had long hair, and my hair was longer than yours, Candice. And I would walk into a fire station, with this long hair, and you get these people look at you as, who's he? He's not wearing uniform. Who is he? And he's telling me how to do my job. Well, no, I wasn't. That wasn't the nature of the job I did. It wasn't how I did it. But that, just looking and pulling at threads of some of the misogyny and some of the sexism. I'm not saying it was everywhere all the time. Quite the opposite. But just the nature and the how the organisations were set up, and how the buildings weren't fit for purpose for a modern world. We've got to make a women's toilet because there's a woman on another shift. Yeah, and that's a problem because obviously the member of the public knocks on the door and says, "Excuse me, I'd like to use the toilet, please." No different. It's a public building, etc. So, working there, I learned a lot about, like I say, the team dynamic piece, about how teams work together and inclusion within teams. That was really interesting, particularly because I was primarily there to support people who were new to the organisation, so probationary firefighters, and the development of new crew managers, watch managers, and so on.
Very interesting. Yeah, there's just so much we could talk about this, so let's not, because tell me all the things.
I should probably have warned you that I've done all of this stuff beforehand, because then you would have gone right.
No, that's the beauty. I love learning about everyone. It's been such a joy. That's the best part of this podcast, is just how much I'll learn about people. Like, I think I know you, but actually I hardly know anything, so it's really awesome. Okay, so yes, let's move on from there. So you said firefighting, and then you went back into retail, and then you did that for government for about 10, 15 years. Any stories you want to share on the government working in government?
So the government thing. So I moved into local government in 2009, and in 2010 in the UK we had a change of government, and we after years of one party, it then shifted and became another party who then been in for 14 years in the UK, and they brought in austerity. So I moved into a sector where all of a sudden there was no money, and I was now working in a place where I'd come from the retail banking sector where I wouldn't say money was no object, but it wasn't unusual to go out and do 3 days on a residential kind of thing, to now a place where I was being told, well, you can't order biscuits and coffee for people. We've got to take the biscuits and coffee away from people. And they can't have coffee and biscuits on courses. And then actually, why do we need the courses? So it made me question and challenge and think about everything that I was doing from a learning development perspective, because the public money was paying for it. The people out on the street were the people who were paying for it, and how happy would they be if they heard that somebody was getting, we were being charged 85p for a packet of 3 biscuits, for example. Not a very good use of public money. So it gave me a real sense of where is money being spent, and getting absolute value and squeezing everything you can out of the resources you've got available. And it fundamentally shifted my thinking around how we do learning and development. So 15 years I'd been in L&D, and I'd been the sage on the stage, telling people how to do their job, hearing from other people and facilitating in that kind of way. Now it made me think, well, we're in a different world now. This was 2010, so the first iPhone came out. All of a sudden moving into digital mobile world, where the nature of working was changing, the nature of learning as a result was going to change as well. So there had to be differences and changes and challenges in how we would do learning. And I spent about 18 months, 2 years working and just researching how we can do stuff in a completely different way, and completely shifted on off the offer that we had in the first organisation I was with.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's excellent experience, and such a good mindset. It's like, okay, so how do we add value with every minute we take of people's time as well? So yeah, that's fascinating.
To give you an example of that, so one of the things we looked at was we worked out that we were spending about 2.5% of our employees' wage bill was going on learning development cost. So our employees were contracted for a 35-hour week. We said, what's 2.5% of a 35-hour week? And it comes in at 52 minutes. So what we did is started designing support that, instead of being used in money, could be used in time. So we would put 52-minute sessions together. We would put resources that would take 26 minutes to do, 13 minutes to do, 6 or 7 minutes to do. So every week there was an opportunity for people to do a range of different things that added up to their, in inverted commas, budget, which they could spend on their development. And it just shifted the thinking, instead of being a pounds and pence piece, to an investment in time. And it just moved the conversation away and the mindset away from it's all about how many pounds you spend, but actually where you invest the time instead.
Interesting. I love that. Wow, that's I've never heard of that before, and that is so good.
This is the way I think about stuff. This is how I think about stuff, Candice. So people come to me and ask me for advice, and I just ask questions like that, for example, and it's like you say, I don't know.
Yeah, such a good. I'm adding that to my repertoire. That's awesome. Sure, fascinating. Okay, yeah, because I am with the client now trying to ask for 15 more minutes to the session. So the sessions are 60 minutes at the moment. And I'm like, we just get into it in 60 minutes. We just need this little bit of more time to have a conversation. So I'm gonna add this in.
Work out what percentage 15 minutes is of their employees' working week, and say, with the overall investment we're looking at is this. We want 0.2% of their time, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah. It'll even be less, because man, these people work. It's insane. They work. Yeah, I don't even know, 60-hour week sort of thing.
Cool. So it's a fraction of a percentage.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I'm having this conversation on Tuesday, so that's awesome. Just in time. Thank you, Andrew, for your wisdom. All right. So now you've had to have had, did people report into you? Have you been a people manager? Have you had a terrible manager? I always like talking about this because, and through my career, I've had brilliant managers, the best managers that have and I think I told you, have made me cry, but they were so good because they got my back. And then just terrible managers that are, under the rug. It's like really bad. So tell me some of your experiences of just working with people, whether you were the manager or you had a manager that really pushed your buttons.
So I'm not a great manager, and I know I'm not a great manager. And there's little incidents. Again, I'm not going to cite specifics because people I know might listen to this and go, "Yeah, that's me." It's unlikely, but I'd rather not. I realised I wasn't a great manager, and this is why I do what I do now, because I'm an independent consultant. So I don't have a managerial responsibility. It's not down to me to make sure that people are doing a job that I want them to do. And it gives me freedom. Now, I work with other people, but it's not on a manager basis, it's on a peer basis. And that's one of the things that, one of the reasons why I do what I do, because I wouldn't want to be the cause of somebody's discomfort. I wouldn't want to be the cause where someone goes, "Oh, I don't know what good management like is, but I know what bad is, and it's him," kind of thing. So it's recognising what you're not good at and not just putting yourself out there to say, "Yeah, I will do it." Now, I'm incredibly lucky because I can do what I do as an independent, with my own company. And as the company develops and as it will develop, I will bring other people in to do that management stuff for me because I know that's not my bag. So from a management perspective, it's one of the things that we really struggle with. So I'm good at learning. So what's the natural progression? You become a learning and development manager, and then you become a learning and development lead, etc. But along with that comes managing people. But it doesn't, just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at another. I had a really interesting conversation with somebody once, and they said they felt so far away from doing the learning thing because all their job was talking to people who were giving them spreadsheets and looking at spreadsheets and documents and PDFs and stuff, and they didn't feel like they were doing the thing that they enjoyed the most. So there's something to do with enjoyment that sits into that space, and I love the fact that I can be hyper creative, put a post out every day, can produce podcasts and do things which are different, and still get paid for it, which is quite nice. But without having to manage other people, and I still have to do all the nitty gritty stuff, all the business management piece, but I know that comes down to me. So it takes away that pressure of having to look after other people. It's not to say I don't like looking after other people. It's just I'm not good at it.
So that is really good insight into yourself. So why do you say you're not a good people manager?
I'm over directive when I shouldn't be. I'm under directive when I should be. I listen. I don't necessarily always hear. I hear and I don't necessarily listen. There's a stuff that I can rattle off. Good managers manage like a pirate. ARR, acknowledge, recognition and reward. And I'm okay at that stuff. I can acknowledge people. I know what's going on. I'm a nice person. I recognise people when they do good stuff, and I call them out for it, and I reward people as I can. But I'm not good on the other stuff. I have expectations that somebody will do something, and if they don't do it, I don't like the confrontation. Going, well, why haven't you done this, and how are you going to fix it, kind of thing. And I feel uncomfortable doing that stuff. And is also having to work within a culture maybe that I don't necessarily like as well, because as a manager you're managing somebody else's aims and objectives within their context, and I don't necessarily like doing that. So it's partly to do with I'm not good at it, but it's also because I'm having to give messages out that I don't believe in sometimes, which feels challenging and difficult. And from a personal integrity perspective, if my eyes, mouth and feet aren't pointing in the same direction, then I struggle with it.
Okay. Yeah, really good self-insights. I think very often we're sort of on the treadmill and just keep going and just, do the natural path. Actually, funny enough, my younger brother is also like that. He just will refuse to be a people manager. He's like, no, thank you. Give me any other job. And I was always like, really? Like, isn't that, the path for him? Because he's in corporate, and he's like, no, I'm good. So yeah, that's awesome. Okay, now you do your consulting, you say you're super lucky. Tell me about like your sort of zone of genius when you work a day and you just feel so energized and you're like, man, that was an amazing day. Tell us what that day looks like.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hate the word genius.
Well, yeah, it is a zone of genius. Have you read the book? What's
No,
it, Guy?
no, no.
Someone? Henrik? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I
So
read that book.
I will look it up. So the stuff so a good day for me will be a late start because I'm not good for the mornings. Um, uh, Something creative early on. So all my good creative stuff comes early on. So like I said, I blog every day. I put a blog post out every day. I post on LinkedIn every day. And I don't post for anybody else. I post for me. But I publish them because people are interested in the stuff that I write about. And I get, I don't know, 400,000 views a year or something. But building a good created post and pulling strands is a phrase I use, turning fibres into fabric, and bringing those different threads together and turning them into fabric of a thought through post is nice. And then getting people acknowledging it and recognizing it, and then a conversation happening from it. So I put a post out this week and didn't get many views, a couple of hundred views or something, but about 16 comments and kind of thing, which is great because that's what they're for. They're not there to chase numbers, but that's one thing I like doing. The doing some good audio editing where we've got a podcast coming out next week and we've had to play with some of the audio to try and make it sound good, and just bringing things together and being able to take really smart women's voices and put them together in such a way just to make them sound better. I've said it to people before. You probably when you came on the podcast, our job and my job is to make you sound great. And that's all our job is. It's not to diminish you at all. Quite the opposite. It's to amplify you and to make you sound as good as possible. So having the opportunity to do that is really cool as well. Recording a podcast and just listening to women I haven't heard from ever. Just pulling stuff apart. The episode that's coming out is just awesome. It's so good. It's weird. I'm not allowed favourites. I'm not going to name which one it is, but it's probably one of my favourites out of all the ones we've done.
Yeah.
Just because the way the guests take the subject and go with it. A bit of delivery, conversations with people. So doing some kind of delivery, and and I'm comfortable doing that online. And I've done 2 or 3 sessions this week, and just had some really nice feedback from people from the sessions that I've done. That's a good day for me. And just the opportunity to chat with people. One thing that's really important is if you're working independently, you're probably working alone. I have in my calendar at least 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 times a week conversations with people, which are just a catch up. How you going? What do you want to know about? I'll give people half an hour for free just to chat along and talk about stuff. And I've in the call from today. I've got 2 then later this afternoon, kind of thing. So
yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, you give so generously as well. I mean, I've been on that chat with you, and I think we spent over an hour just on a casual chat. So yeah, you're doing such amazing stuff for women, and and we'll get there. But I just wanted to ask you, like, while we're on this, like, great day, what is something that people are not speaking enough about when it comes to building a career, a life that you enjoy? Because I love my work. I'm one of the few people, and I just feel like, building a career and your life is not separate. So, this career, life, work, what is something we need to be speaking more about?
That's really interesting. I'm pausing because there was a period where my family went through some significant issues to do with births and deaths and cancer and all those kind of things. And they put work into clear focus. there's two or three phrases that I abide with, and one of them is that you work to live, you don't live to work, and that's really important. And putting work in its place in what you do in life is really important. So one of the reasons I stayed with so many organisations for so long was I wanted the opportunity to make sure I was coming home and seeing my boys when I came home from work, so that they would finish their college, whatever it was, school, and they would come home. One of my jobs every night was always to iron their school shirts for the next day. And I needed to be home to make sure their school shirts were ironed for the next day. And that was just something that we agreed as a family. I never went outside of that until they were old enough and comfortable enough, and we spoke about it as a family to say, there's these opportunities coming up and I will go here and there and wherever, which meant leaving and being overnight elsewhere in the UK and externally as well, outside the UK. So balancing work and life is really important, and it's making sure you have absolute clarity on how they go together. And that only came about because we went through a series, like I say, I'm not going to go into details, we went through a series of really challenging personal issues, and they just help understand working context.
Yeah, I love that. I love that little phrase you use, put work in its place. Like that's a nice image in my mind. It's like, okay, this is where, because I certainly have those days when I'm like, oh, I'm just in the zone. I just want to work, and and then I'm like rushing out to make dinner, and because I also work from home, and so it's like balancing is so hard. So I like that, put work in its place, because I've definitely had days, especially last year, where I've definitely let it impact the family, which is not a good thing.
If you're working independently, you could easily work 12, 15 hours a day every day, 6 days a week, and half that time on a Sunday, while you're setting your business up and driving and trying to get stuff done. You could easily do that, and you fall into that trap. You have to balance that time out and go, I will do this, I won't do that. There's something that we as a family we have is what we call 1, 2, 3, 4 time. So there's myself, my wife, and my 2 sons. And when they were younger, we used to have 1, 2, 3, 4 time, where we would go, right, well, everybody every month we have 1 4 time where we're all together, bowling, cinema, whatever. We would also all have 1, 2, 3 time, where it might be my wife and my son, eldest, and my wife, and myself, my wife, and my eldest son. That's a 3. And then my youngest would have 1 time for himself, and then there might be 3 time, which would be me and my 2 sons, and my wife would have time for herself, and then we would have 2 time as well. So you make sure that every month you have 4 time, 3 time, 2 time, and 1 time all the way through. And we used to plan it and put it in the calendar, and just doing stuff like that and making sure that work is one part of that, and your 1 time isn't doing your work. Your 1 time is time for you, and it forces you to have to structure time around the work that you do, structure work around the time that you have. And that's the change and the shift, which, like I said, when you work in a corporate, work is here until here, arguably, although we know people answer emails at 7 in the morning and 8 and 9 o'clock at night. But if you build those times in, you can work around it. And it's having a structure around it, but also having absolute clarity on a target and an aim and objective, that's the way that you want to be.
Well, we are doing that. We do have date nights with our children, and we rotate every month, but it's good to have like this bit of structure. That's great. There's so many things I'm taking. All right, Andrew, let's go wrap it up all the way back to your younger self. What would you thank yourself for doing back then when you were just starting out?
I would thank myself for getting bored and doing lots of different things. We could sit back and look at my career. There's no straight line. At all. Everybody has a wiggly career. Mine is particularly wiggly, just by the nature of the organisations that I've worked with and the jobs that I've done, particularly early on. So, well done for not conforming and doing what everybody expected you to, but actually not being unafraid to challenge and push, and try lots of different things.
Oh, yeah, I love that. That is really good. Well, yeah, congrats for being bored. That's great. Yes, that is a great way of putting it. Because yes, I think all of your different experiences really shaped, what you do today, and then that's how we're going to end. So tell us, what you do. Please dig a little bit deeper into, the podcast and the why around it, and then also the work you do with clients.
Okay, so like I said, I'm an independent learning consultant. Somebody described me as a learning strategist, which I think is a brilliant title, which I've stolen with pride. I steal with pride all the time. So I work with organisations, helping them understand how to develop their people better, and that's in every space. So public sector, private sector, third sector, UK, Europe, and in the US as well. I work with organisations, like I said, on how to develop people with pretty much anything in terms of skills, but particularly in the management and leadership space. Like I said, I'm rubbish at management, but I know what works. Probably because I've done it, done it badly. I also work with learning vendors as well, helping them understand what's happening in the market. People come to me and talk to me a lot about what they're trying to work on and how stuff works. From that's where the idea for the podcast came about. So Women Talking About Learning is a podcast which is designed to amplify the voices of women. There are twice as many men in senior roles in learning and development than there are women, and so there's a need to rebalance that. And a few years ago I made a conscious decision that I wouldn't come onto a podcast, speak at an event, write an article unless the publisher, host, event had at least an equal split of male and female speakers. And I thought, isn't that good? Aren't I good? But that was about me. And that was me, virtual signalling, going, aren't I a good person? And it created some shifts, but it wasn't amplifying voices. What was happening is people come to me and go, oh, Andrew, you can't do that. Who would you recommend? And I didn't necessarily have people. So the podcast was set up to create a space to amplify voices of women who maybe we haven't heard from. And that's what it's for. So over half our guests are new to podcasting. We are global with about 30% UK, 30% US, 40% the rest of the world in terms of listenership. We're 100 plus episodes, and every one of them is a surprise. And it is just the thing I love more than anything else that I've done in learning development, because, like I said, I get to sit there every few weeks and just listen to smart women saying smart stuff. And I'm just like clapping hands and laughing along. People can't hear that because I'm not on the podcast. But just get the opportunity to hearing smart people say smart stuff. I'm just like so lucky.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you create such a great vibe as well, because I have been privileged to be a guest. So that is, it really does feel good that, you recognized and appreciated. So yeah, thank you. It really is a great space. And anything else you want to say? Where can people get hold of you? What's the best place? I mean, obviously we'll put all the links in the description and all of that good stuff, but any final things to wrap up?
So you can find me on all the socials. I'm not on Twitter, not anymore, because it's a hurtful place and a hateful place. I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on LinkedIn, and so on. Connect with me. If you just want to chat, just connect with me. We'll book a chat in. You've got a problem in work that you just can't work out. We'll have a chat. Like I said, I'll happily have a chat with people and talk through stuff, because, I might have some experience, but if I haven't got experience, I can ask the right questions. Somebody once said to me, and I felt I was being found out, they went, you ask great questions. And I realised, I just ask questions for a living. And that's all I do. What happens when someone works that out?
That is a skill, though. I mean, I teach that, teach that. I help people ask questions because it's so powerful. And that section is called Powerful Questioning, actually. So, yeah. That is a huge skill. So don't underestimate your skill there.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Andrew. It has been an absolute privilege, as always, to chat with you. So thank you for your time. And yeah, I am very excited to get this out there.
Thank you, Candice, and thank you for the opportunity. I don't do many of these kind of things, but I'm looking forward to hearing what your audience get from it.
Yes, a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.